Carl was the CEO and owner of Pharmagraphics, a business many of you knew here in town, and he was a member of this club for 14 years. He served as president in 2002, 2003. After they sold Pharmagraphics, they moved to Florida, the St. Pete area, in 2006, and they've lived there ever since. Both Carl and Lena have participated in multiple national polio immunization days in Africa and India. They're truly both great humanitarians and have been recognized internationally for their work. Carl is now a member of the Rotary Club of St. Petersburg, and he has served as district governor for that district, which is 6950, during the 2011 and 12 year. During that year, his district was recognized as one of the top 15 districts in the world, and he was recognized at the International Convention. He's a recipient of the citation for meritorious service from the Rotary Foundation. They have two children, Emily and Rick, who have both made their way to California. Emily is recently received her PhD. I should say not received, she earned her PhD recently. Rick is a graduate of Providence College, and as I said, they're both in California. Carl is a long-distance runner, and he and Lena both love to travel. He's also the author of a book, a very interesting book, The Unexpected Perspective, which argues against the false dichotomy of having to choose between science and Christianity. You might pick that up if you've not had a chance to see it. Carl and Lena are members of the Arch Clump Society, which recognizes the top-tier donors to the Rotary Foundation across the world. And Carl now serves as the Endowment and Major Gifts Advisor for Zone 34. Zone 34 covers Georgia, Florida, and 25 countries through the islands. So he has quite an expansive territory to cover. Carl's here to talk to us today about the Rotary Foundation, just a couple days in advance of Rotary Foundation Month, which starts November 1st. So I don't have to prompt you to give a warm welcome for one of our very own, Carl Treleaven.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Always great to come back to Crescent Rotary. And this afternoon, as Patrick said, I want to talk about the foundation. And you probably know, about 100 years ago, this summer, the then RI president, Arch Clump, came up with what at that time was probably a very out-of-the-box idea, which was to establish a foundation to help Rotarians do good in the world. And he backed it up by writing a check for $26.50, getting this foundation started. And as I'm confident you know, over the last 100 years, that foundation has done amazing things to help Rotarians do great things in the world. And this afternoon, what I want to talk about is why each one of you and I and our fellow 1.2 million Rotarians around the world ought to support this foundation the best that we possibly can. Well, the obvious question is, there are loads of great charities right here in Greensboro. Sam, you mentioned one already. Other ones in North Carolina, others around the country, others around the world, much deserving of our support. The question, of course, is, why should we be supporting the Rotary Foundation? Why this particular one? And then there's actually another one for many Rotary clubs, this one and mine too, because each of our clubs has its own club foundation. And many Rotarians ask, well, hey, shouldn't I support the club foundation? After all, it's doing great stuff in the community. And one of the things I want to talk about today is why you should support not only the club foundation, but also the Rotary Foundation. Well, the first reason has to do with that old question, when you get your checkbook out and you write the check to the charity, what's going to happen to your money? You ever wonder about that? Sure people do all the time. And you hear these stories about charities not doing a very good job about it. The good news, the Rotary Foundation does a very fine job of that. Now, standards say that for every dollar that you give to a charity, you ought to be getting at least 65 cents of it going to programs of what was intended. In the case of the Rotary Foundation, it's 92 cents. 92 cents. And you can be assured that money is in fact being well spent. Some of you may have heard that the Rotary Foundation is recognized by Charity Navigator as a 4-star charity. Now that may not be meaningful until you also find out that only 1% of charities actually get that. So we at our foundation are in a very unique 1% group. Your money is very, very well spent with this charity. Now that in and of itself, I think, would be enough reason to support the Rotary Foundation. But let me give you some better reasons to support it. And that, of course, would be the programs that the Rotary Foundation supports. The first one, of course, being our signature program, polio. And I think you've recently had a program on that, so I'm not going to go into details of it. But of course, you know, Rotary has been involved in this since around 1980. We've gone from having 350,000 new cases of polio every single year down to just 12 this year. Just 12. We are truly this close to finishing off the job. And we expect to do it within the next year or so. And of course, that will be a tremendous gift to the world, eliminating this terrible disease. What some people don't realize is there's another benefit to it too, and that's actually the financial benefit. You see, the world today spends more than $1 billion every year on polio. What happens when we're done? That $1 billion could be used for something else. It's almost as though Rotary is giving the world a gift of $1 billion, and then $1 billion the year after, and $1 billion the year after that in perpetuity. The accountants here can figure out the value of that. But it's a tremendous thing. So polio, great program. And then, of course, scholarships. Now, Patrick alluded to the fact that a former member of this club is now a Peace Scholar, getting a terrific scholarship to go to the University of Queensland. Many people don't realize that the Rotary Foundation is the world's largest non-governmental provider of scholarships. We do it at the local level, the national level, the international level. And it is amazing when you consider how many lives have been transformed because of a Rotary scholarship. All kinds of people, you may know some of those people. So scholarships, obviously, a second big reason. The third reason, of course, are the various district and global grants that Rotary does. And you probably have heard that we focus these in 6 different areas. One being water and sanitation, maternal and childhood health, disease prevention and management, economic and community development, peace and conflict resolution, and education and literacy. Basic education and literacy. So a broad range of things, and yet a certain focus to it. We won't do everything. And we do those both on the district and on the global level. And the good thing about those projects is every single one of them has at least a local Rotary Club involved with it. So you can know that the money that you're putting into it is going to be well managed by local Rotarians who truly understand what that problem is, which oftentimes you can't say with other charities. So that's a whole second reason besides stewardship. In other words, all these great programs that we have in the foundation. Let me, though, suggest there's a third reason that may be the best one of all, and that is the Rotary Foundation actually supports what makes Rotary unique, our unique value out there. Well, the obvious question would be, well, what's unique about Rotary? What makes us different from Kiwanis, Lions, all these other organizations? They all do great work too. What's really different about us? And ultimately, the thing that makes Rotary unique is contained in our object of Rotary. Now, I'm not going to go through exactly what that is, but the core thing in the object of Rotary is that we are organized based upon our vocation. Every one of us is supposed to come in here with our unique set of vocational skills And the idea is to take each Rotary Club, bring all the vocations in a city or a town together. Get it? So we're not all just a bunch of lawyers, accountants, or whatever. We represent everything. And each one of us has our own particular network of contacts. So the point being then is, whatever the problem might be, then we can find a way to solve it. And in fact, it brings us then to what I call Rotary's unique value proposition. You see, when someone comes into Rotary, we ask them for three things. We ask them to bring high ethical standards. Second, we ask them to bring vocational skills and expertise. And finally, a network of contacts. And in return, we offer the following to everyone. The first, an opportunity for leadership development, an opportunity for mentoring, either to give it or to receive it, an opportunity for networking, an opportunity to do service in the community, or service internationally. Friendship, fellowship, and fun. And maybe beyond that, just maybe the opportunity to have your life transformed by the experience. Nobody else has that. That is truly what makes Rotary unique. What I want to share with you then is how the Rotary Foundation backs that up and really makes that possible for all of us to do. And let me share with you a story of how it happened. This, in fact, is a real story. You see, there was one time a little boy, and every day his mom would kiss him goodbye, he would head off to school, stay in school all day, then he would come home, his mom would greet him at the door. I'll bet you some of you had that experience too when you were kids. Well, one day he came home, but his mom wasn't there, because apparently while he had been at school that day, his mom had taken ill and had to go to the hospital. His father and grandfather were Rotarians, and it just so happened they were having a Rotary committee meeting for their club at their house that night. So that night, sitting around the dining room table were a whole bunch of Rotarians, just like you and me, and the little boy is kind of standing in the corner, looking in, like the little boys will tend to do. While the meeting was going on, the phone rang, and so the little boy's father answered the phone. He happened to have it right there. As he was on the phone, he's listening, and the longer he listened, the graver the look got to be on his face. He hung up the phone and announced, well, they've diagnosed her. She has polio. Well, the good news is she could survive. The bad news, she needed to be in an iron lung, but there were no iron lungs in the city they lived in. Not only that, there were no iron lungs in the country that they lived in. So this woman has to get an iron lung pretty quickly, or she will be gone. Now, remember I said, these are Rotarians. So what do Rotarians do? Well, get on the phone, start working their network. Got to find somebody find an iron lung somewhere. Well, somebody found an iron lung in a nearby country. All right? They found that. It was available. How do we get it there? Well, had to arrange transportation from that country to their country. And then when we got there, got to get it through customs. Then you got to get it transported. All these different things. But these guys are Rotarians. They got it done. And the iron lung got there just in time for this woman. So she's in this iron lung, and days turn into weeks, and weeks turn into months. And finally, after about 9 months, the little boy's mother walked out of the hospital and lived 47 more years. It would only have happened because those guys were Rotarians. Now, do you think that might have had some impact on that little boy's life? Absolutely. Absolutely it did. You will notice I did not mention what country it was. In fact, it was Sri Lanka. And the little boy? His name is Ravi Ravindran. You may have heard of him. He was president of Rotary a couple years ago. And truly, that experience changed his life, as it has for so many other people, as I've been telling you this afternoon. And that's a perfect example of how Rotary really gets things done. With that worldwide network of 1.2 million people in different professions with networks all tied together. Which brings me back then to how does the Rotary Foundation support all of that? Well, the first way we do it is through what are called the SHARE program. And the SHARE program is this idea that when we give money to the Rotary Foundation, half of it comes back to the district and the clubs 3 years later. I don't know anybody else who has something like that. So why do we do it? The idea is, again, because Rotarians in the local clubs and districts know what the needs are, what the problems are. And they can, when they work together, they can get financial support, which then brings me to the point of how the Rotary Foundation can leverage our gifts. You see, when we do a project in the district, it's oftentimes matched by money from the Rotary Foundation. So there's just that much more money. When we do a global project, oftentimes $1 ultimately turns into $3, $4, or $5. Now, you remember I was talking about a club foundation before? Well, club foundations do wonderful things in a community. But think of it this way. Imagine you have a project of $10,000 from a club foundation. With money from the Rotary Foundation, that could turn into $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. Maybe more than that. The club foundation can't do that alone. So that is a core reason to support the Rotary Foundation. So ultimately, when we look back at this, a whole bunch of reasons to support this foundation created 100 years ago by Arch Clump. Because of the great stewardship we have, because of the great programs, polio, scholarships, district and global grant projects, and then ultimately because this entire system has been set up to support individual Rotarians and Rotary clubs to do what we do best, serving others through our vocation. And so I ask you, as Foundation Month comes up, to think seriously how you can support the Rotary Foundation, not only with your time, but also with your financial support. Because Arch Clump's out-of-the-box idea has clearly, profoundly transformed Rotary and the world about us. Thank you very much.